This is Ryan Regan from HKEXCEL. So I used to be an IB economics student myself, and I got 7 out of 7 in my IB HL economics. And now I'm the founding partner of HKEXCEL. And our team at HKEXCEL, we help over 500 students all around the world. Okay, so we have taught every kind of student you can imagine. Okay, enough of talking about myself and our team. What I'm going to do in this video is to tell you some very important exam techniques, okay, for IB economics higher level, because I know a lot of students, they know the concept in economics, but they're not able to apply this knowledge in answering questions effectively, and therefore they struggle to get a 6 or a 7. Okay, so in this video I'm going to teach you exactly the most important exam techniques, and I'm going to show you how to apply them. More importantly, I'm going to show you how to apply these exam techniques into some IB kind of exam questions. Okay, so in this 20 to 30 minutes, I believe if you focus, okay, it will be the most useful 20 to 30 minutes you have ever spent on IB economics, because I'll tell you all the strategies you need to get a level 7 when it comes to answering questions. Okay, so in the caption column, you probably should see a link for you to download our notes. Yeah, a link to download our notes. So the notes is right in front of me here, so I'm going to refer to this. So if you don't mind, if you're a printer at home, I recommend you print it out so you can follow along as I go through the note. Okay, so in this free report, what I'm going to go through is basically the paper 1. Okay, so in paper 1, how is the exam structured in paper 1? So you should know paper 1, there's a micro session and there's a macro session. Those are two separate sessions, right? So inside the micro session and the macro session, you can choose to answer one question out of 2 questions. And for each question, there's part A and there's part B. Part A is explanation question. Part B is the evaluation question. So what I'm going to tell you today is the most important exam strategies for both part A and part B. Okay, so let us begin. Go to this page. Okay, so the keys to answering part A questions. So part A is normally, how do you know it's a part A question? It is 10 marks, and it's always like explain. Okay, explain something, analyze something. Okay, so for these questions, what you have to do, I believe, are 5 things. You have to do these 5 things in order. If you do all these 5 things properly and you know your concepts, you have to get a level 7, at least 8 or 9 out of 10. Okay, so number 1, all relevant definitions. So all relevant definitions means everything in the question. Okay, so if in the question it talks about public goods, then you must define the word public good. You have to define every term in the question, and also terms that could be related to the question. Diagrams drawn. So you have to draw diagrams related to the question, and you have to explain the diagram in great detail. Explain the diagram. Yeah. Lastly, you have a lot of students, after they draw the diagram, they forget to answer the question. You have to answer the question. And lastly, real life example. Okay, so if you have all the 5 of these things, no reason why you can't get a level 7. Okay, so let's look at an exam question to try to use this strategy. Okay, explain the private and external benefits from university education. IB had a very similar question in previous years. It's not the exact same phrasing, but it's very similar. Okay, so what do you see? What do we need to define in paragraph 1? Normally, what you need to do is define, right? So what do we define here? Well, private benefit, right? Everything in the question that's worth defining. That's an economic term. So private benefits is one. External benefit is another one. Okay. And university education, you should know university education is a merit good. So you should define that as well. Okay, so we're going to say something like university education is a merit good. And then you define it. You should also know it as a case of market failure. Right? And then you define it. Okay, so let's see, how can we define it? Private benefits, what does it mean referred to as private benefits? So it's benefit to the consumers, right? Benefits to the consumers. Private, right? Only the person who consumed it. External benefits means benefits to third parties, what we call third parties, right? So I think this is it, right? And then is a merit good. So we say university education is a merit good. So what does it mean by merit good? Goods with external benefits, right? or also known as aka externalities, right? Okay, and then lastly, market failure. What does it mean by market failure? Market failure, so you can say university education is an example of market failure. Market failure is the inability of a free market, okay, to allocate resources efficiently. Okay, that's the definition of market failure. Okay, what is the next part? Diagram, right? Okay, let's draw the diagram. What is this? What diagram to draw? The market failure diagram, right? So this is positive consumption externalities. So as I always teach, positive consumption externality, you always put two demand curves, okay? Two demand curves and one supply curve. So in terms of the demand curve, as always MSB and MPB, right? Which one is higher, MSB or MPB? The MSB is higher. You put MSB here and you put MPB here. And this upward sloping supply curve, we call it the MPC, and it also equals to the MSC, right? Then you label the points, okay? This point is where MPC cuts MPB, right? MPC cuts MPB, we call that the equilibrium point, And here, it's where the MSC cuts MSB, so we call that the socially optimum point. So we call it P opt and Q opt, right? So you should know there's a potential welfare gain. The way I always teach students how to remember potential welfare gain is, look, there's Q opt and there's Q, right? The potential welfare gain is always the triangle between Q and Q opt that points towards Q opt. So very clearly it is this triangle right here, right? Okay, so let's see how we can explain this diagram. So number one, we can say MSB exceeds MPB. So why is this the case? Remember, so this is always how I like to explain market failure diagram. First, you explain why there are two demand curves. Okay, due to the positive external benefits, right? So because there are positive external benefits, the social benefit exceeds the private benefit, right? And then next you say the market equilibrium is at where? Where's the market equilibrium? P and Q, right? Why? So that is where MPC equals MPB, right? That's where the market equilibrium is. How about the socially optimum point? Socially optimum point is, so it's here, MSC equals MS, is where MSC equals MSB, right? At P opt and Q opt, right? Socially optimum point is where MSC equals MSB at P opt, Q opt. So there's market failure. Why? So university education is underconsumed. Okay, uni education is underconsumed, right? If you don't understand why, it's because the Q opt is here, but the equilibrium is here. So the equilibrium is less than the optimum point. So we say it's underproduced. Okay, good. Look, so we have drawn the diagram, we have explained the diagram, but we haven't answered the question. The question is, what are the private benefits and the external benefits, right? So we can't just stop here. Okay, so what are the private benefits? That's right here. What are the private benefits of education? How do you benefit when you consume university education? One example may be increased productivity, right? Leading to higher income. So that's a very direct way an individual benefit from university education. So, in other words, maybe after you go into university, perhaps Harvard, you become very proud of yourself, right? So improving self-esteem. That could be another one, right? And perhaps, what other private benefits can you get? For example, better understanding of the world, right? Better appreciation of the world, okay? So more enjoyment of life, this kind of thing as well. How does it benefit other people? How does it benefit? So when you go into university, how do you benefit other people? So for example, you can higher income allows individual to do what? To support families, right? And therefore, it can improve the living standard of family members. right? Let's say if you go into university, after going to university, you earn big bucks, you can support your family members. Yeah? Okay. What other reasons could there be? Think about it. How else may you benefit other people? So for example, you can increase economic growth, which benefits the entire society, right? Because after you consume university education, you can contribute to the workforce. Okay? Good. So examples, I think you can give some examples here. Like for example, improving self-esteem. An individual after going to Harvard will be very proud. Okay, good. So let us go straight to the next part. Next part, so now I've taught you how to answer part A questions. Of course, you need to know the concept, but I think I've given you the basic framework, right? Always have these 5 components, like what I did. When you explain a diagram, explain it in great detail. Okay, so now let's look at the next part, evaluation questions. Look, so evaluation questions, the way I like to do it is, I think evaluation, the first thing you need to be able to do is you need to be able to brainstorm the right arguments, right? You have to be able to brainstorm the right arguments. And after you brainstorm the right arguments, you need to structure your essay in a way that flows. And lastly, you must have a good conclusion. Okay, so for evaluation question, there are many types of evaluation questions, right? But I'm going to teach you 2 types of evaluation questions today. Okay, and this includes the market failure evaluation question and also the macroeconomics evaluation question. So, market failure. So you notice the way you brainstorm is kind of different. Okay, so see, I have these methods for you to brainstorm, and when you follow these methods, it's like you automatically will come up with what's in the market. See, this is the magic behind these brainstorming techniques, right? Look, so market failure, you always look at stakeholders. So what are the stakeholders? Well, like consumers, producers, government, and the society at large. Okay? Long run and short run. Because a lot of times they'll ask you to evaluate policies to stop market failure. Some policies are more effective in the short run. Some policies will take longer to work. So they are more of long-term policies. Okay? Different scenarios. This is often useful depending on the question. Okay? So for example, but not all questions you can use all 4. It depends on the question. But sometimes, for example, they ask whether or not the government should subsidize merit goods, right? So merit goods, there are many kinds of merit goods. So you can say in some cases they should, in some cases they shouldn't, okay? Lastly, limitations and unintended consequences. So all policies have unintended consequences, right? Good. For macro, this is how you evaluate. Macro objectives. So macro objectives refer to 3 main things: unemployment, inflation, and growth. These are the 3 main things, right? So if they talk to you about a policy, you can basically say, okay, so this policy is going to lead to more inflation, blah, blah, blah. Different situations. Okay, so for example, this means a lot of things. Like for example, there's types of unemployment. If the question asks you about unemployment, you can say, okay, there are different types of unemployment. We should look at different types of unemployment separately. Or the types of inflation, right? There can be different types of inflation as well. Cost push and demand pull, right? And then lastly, advantage and disadvantage. This basically you memorize off the textbook. Okay, your textbook will give you advantage and disadvantage. Just memorize some. Alternative. So what does it mean? If the question asks you to talk about demand side policies, then basically what you got to do is compare with supply side policies. Okay. As I mentioned just now, so after you brainstorm all your arguments, it is very important for you to basically have a conclusion that is sort of an evaluative conclusion. Okay, your conclusion, in your conclusion, you evaluate all the points and give a very valid conclusion, right? So these are some magic phrases, because I found it very hard to teach students how to write evaluation. So I came up with 6 magic phrases in which you could use to basically write your evaluation. Number 1 is it depends. It depends. Okay, so a lot of times, whether to do something depends on the situation. For example, right? So in long run, short run, you can talk about the long run effect, short run effect. In general, so you can say, for example, how does this policy work? So you can say, in general, it leads to blah 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 blah. Right? To a certain extent, this is useful for some questions. Right? So to a certain extent, this is true. To a certain extent, no. So because on one hand this, on the other hand that, right? And it's most important to consider. So some questions you can use this, right? So you talk about the most important factor here. A balance should be struck between, okay? So for example, if you cut taxes, maybe you will have less tax revenue, right? So you can say a balance should be, but on the other hand, there's growth. So you can say a balance should be struck between economic growth and sufficient government revenue, something like that, okay? So now, let us look at the evaluation questions, okay? We have two. I'll show you how to do two, so you can see how we can actually apply the concept I told you just now. Evaluate two policies to reduce smoking. Okay, so in your paragraph 1, basically you define all the terms, right? So what do we define? I think most importantly is demerit good, right? Because cigarettes is a demerit good, so it is a good with negative consumption externalities, right? And then also market failure is also related, right? So because it has negative externalities, so it is clearly an example of market failure. Okay? Good? So now we go straight to the first policy. So I'm not going to go into great detail here. I'm just going to try to show you how do you go about evaluating it. Okay? I'm not going to write everything in detail. It would take too long. Normally in our regular lessons I go in detail, but for this let's keep it a bit brief to keep it short. Okay, so first, as I mentioned just now, you think about the stakeholders, right? Long run, short run, different scenario, limitations, unintended consequence. Okay, so first, why don't we talk about tax, indirect tax. So indirect tax, as you know, increase the cost of production. The supply curve shifts left, right? So the price goes up, the quantity decreases. I'm assuming you know this. So how does the tax affect the stakeholders? First of all, what happens to consumer? Prices go up for consumers, right? So this is a disadvantage, increased price for consumer. So whenever you say something like this, you always think about how to elaborate it a bit further, right? So for example, in this case, how does it affect the consumer? You can say less disposable income for smokers. Disposable income means income to spend on other goods, right? So if the price goes up, you spend more on buying cigarettes, you have less to spend on other goods, right? So basically, you can say there could be a fall in living standards, right? Okay, how about the producers? Less revenue. I'm sure you know this, right? Whenever you have indirect tax, producer revenue goes down. Elaborate a bit on it. So there could be unemployment. Firms may lay off workers, right? Okay, and the other stakeholder is the government, right? So government, tax revenue for government. I'm sure you know this. Tax revenue for government. So of course you can say this allow government to do what? To subsidize merit goods or provide public goods, right? So to solve other cases of market failure. Okay? How about in terms of society? So you know, cigarettes are overproduced in society, right? So there's a welfare loss. Right, so this is going to reduce welfare loss. You could, all of these points, you should explain it relating to the diagram. You should draw a diagram here and then relate the diagram to these points. But for this video purpose, I don't think there's a need to. Okay, so and then you look at long run, short run. Okay, so one thing you want to know is that one of the main criticisms about indirect tax is that cigarettes have an inelastic demand, right? So even if the price goes up, very few smokers would stop smoking. But this is actually only for the short run, right? So inelastic demand in short run. Okay, so the tax is ineffective in reducing smoking, right? But why do I say that? Because in the long run, PED tends to go up. In the long run, PED tends to go up. Why is that the case? Because smokers are able to find substitutes, right? So the PED is higher. So you can say, yeah, in long run, PED increases. Okay, so the tax becomes more effective. Sorry, this is the disadvantage, this is the advantage. So the advantage is in the long run it's more effective. Okay, so different scenario. What do I mean by different scenario? Different scenario. So one different scenario is one of the very clear distinction in terms of cigarettes is cigarette tax is more effective for some people. It's more effective for young people who have low income, because young people who have low income, they tend to be more sensitive to price changes. They're more price conscious because they have a lower income, right? So that's exactly what you could say, right? So it's more effective towards youth. Whom have a higher PED. The reason it's more effective because they have a higher PED. So they are more responsive. They're more responsive to price changes, right? So that's it. Okay. And then lastly, unintended consequence or limitation. So limitations, there's one. So in order for the indirect tax to completely reduce, so it's hard. Okay, I think I need to draw the diagram to explain this point. Okay, so the diagram is this, right? So that the two demand curves, one supply curve. So first you draw the market failure diagram, MPB and then MSB here. MPB greater than MSB because of the negative externalities, and then MPC here, right? Equals MSC. So in here, this is P and Q. MSC, MSB, that's Q opt and P opt, right? This is welfare loss. So ideally, what does the tax do? The tax should move the equilibrium, move until it reaches Q opt, right here. This is the most ideal case, right? The market equilibrium is now at Q opt, right? So, but for this to happen, so this is the best in society's point of view. The tax have completely eliminated the market failure. This is the best in society's point of view. But of course, you should remember that it is very hard to estimate the value of the externality. For the tax to completely eliminate the market failure, the externality must equal to the value of the tax, right? So it's very hard to do that. So you can say it's hard to implement the right amount of tax. And the way you elaborate on this is by saying tax, okay, have to be the same as the value of the externality in order for the welfare loss to be removed completely. But this is hard because it's hard to estimate the value of the externality. Okay, good. And then if you want another unintended consequences, for example, black market, right? Producers want to evade the tax and hence create a black market which is not supervised by the government. Okay. So now we only talked about one policy. Let's talk about another one, which is advertising. So advertising, what does it do? It reduces the demand for smoking, right? So some very basic points in terms of consumers, lower price instead of increasing, right? Because the demand goes down, the price goes down. Disadvantage, reduced revenue for producers, right? Same idea. Government, so there's a government spending, right? Government should spend on advertising to discourage smoking. And hence, we say that here there's an opportunity cost. Okay? So, and then, in terms of long run, short run, so it's a long time to take effect. That's the most common criticism of advertising. It takes time to change consumers' preferences. You can't change it all at once. Okay, and then limitations. And so I think this is mainly it. Right, long time to take effect. Okay. So now let's think about how we can do the conclusion. Okay, let's go back to this. More cases. It depends. Okay. So evaluating these policies. Okay. So one of the phrases I think we can use is in general. Okay. So conclusion. Why? So in general, what happens? Policies that reduce smoking. What do they have in common in general? What kind of effects do they have? Well, first of all is it reduces it reduces welfare loss, right? By reducing harms of smoking to society, right? Through reducing smoking. So this is a good thing. It reduces welfare loss to society because it reduces the harms of smoking by directly reducing smoking, all of these policies. But on the other hand, what is the bad thing? However, A, reduce producer revenue and lead to unemployment. Okay, how about long run, short run? So long run, short run, I think we can use this as well. So in the short run, indirect tax is more effective. Because indirect tax will have sort of an immediate effect. Indirect tax will have more of an immediate effect, right? But however, over the long run, advertising, okay, may become more effective. Okay, because it changes consumers' preference over the long run, right? So lastly, I think a balance should be struck between. This is actually a very good phrase to use. Why do we say that? A balance should be struck between. So because on one hand you have unemployment, if you reduce smoking too much, there will be very high unemployment. But if you don't reduce smoking, there's a lot of harm from smoking. So you can say a balance should be struck, right? Strike between which two objectives? Reducing smoking and reducing unemployment. Right. So how can we elaborate on this? So one thing you could say is by saying something like, if the intervention is too heavy, okay, there could be too high unemployment, which damages the society, right? Which harms workers. However, if the tax is too low, the harms of smoking, okay, would be too high, right, to society. So a balance should be struck between these two, and they should impose the right amount of intervention to strike a balance, right? Good? Okay, now let us go to the next question. Evaluate the use of demand-side policies to reduce unemployment. Okay, so what can we do here? So we define demand-side policy, unemployment. One thing that's very important is you need to explain how demand-side policy reduce unemployment, right? So explain how. So how? Basically, it's expansionary demand-side policies, right? So policies that increase AD, so expansionary. Okay, normally in the lesson I would teach you exactly what are they, but since this is just like a quick video, we don't have time for that. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up to you. Okay, so but anyways, you need to explain the expansionary policies here. That's the whole point. Okay, but anyways, let's look at our arguments. Okay, what are they? So I'm just going to do the brainstorming with you. Okay, so we look at macro objectives. If you use demand-side policy to reduce unemployment, what is going to happen? Let's look at a Keynesian diagram, for example. Let's say the economy is here. If you increase your AD, you can see the prices go up, right? There's an increase in price. So inflation could occur, right? Obviously. How about the output? What happens to the output? Output increase, right? So there's more economic growth, right? Okay. So, different situation. This is very critical. So do you know what kind of unemployment are there? There's cyclical and natural. Cyclical unemployment occurs regardless of the output, occurs because of a recession. Cyclical unemployment occurs whenever there's a deflationary gap in the economy, right? On the other hand, natural unemployment occurs regardless of the output. Natural unemployment includes structural, seasonal, and frictional. The only way to reduce natural unemployment is by supply-side policy. So what you can say here is demand-side policy is effective for cyclical and effective for natural. When you make this argument, of course you can elaborate on this, right? But the reason why it reduces cyclical is because it increases output. As you increase output, increases the labor demand. If the labor demand is increased, there's no more cyclical unemployment. But it's ineffective for natural because you need supply-side policies. What are some examples? Training for workers so they can find new jobs to reduce structural unemployment. Or another one, reducing unemployment benefits so they have more incentive to retrain themselves and to equip themselves for new jobs, right? Things like that. Okay? So this is a very important argument. Next one, So general advantages and disadvantages. This, I'm not going to teach this here because you can find this in your textbook, right? Just memorizing. For example, monetary policy. It depends on consumer and business confidence. If consumer and business confidence are low, even if you lower interest rate, the increase in aggregate demand may not be significant, okay? Fiscal policy. You may go into a budget deficit. There could be crowding out. All these kinds of things, right? Good? So I think these are the main arguments you would need to go into. Okay, but what about the conclusion? So it's evaluate the effectiveness. So it depends. Of course it depends, right? So you can use the term it depends here. It depends on what type of unemployment. If there's high natural unemployment, the government should focus on supply side policies. On the other hand, if it's cyclical unemployment, there's a recession, demand side policies will be effective, right? So, and I think this is the main thing. It depends on the type of unemployment, right? The use of demand side, okay? But you can also say in general. So in general, the demand side policies have certain limitations. Then you can recap the disadvantages there, okay? And also, so there are limitations in general, and there are also trade-offs, right? And you can also talk about in general there are these trade-offs, okay? So I know if you're still watching this, I can tell that you're quite serious about getting good marks in economics. Okay, you're here, you're online, you're watching our video, and you're taking notes perhaps, and you're listening very carefully. So I can tell you're serious about this. You're serious about getting a good mark for IB Economics. Okay, so this is why I believe our online platform is, if you're an overseas student outside Hong Kong, our online platform will be a great source for you to improve your IB Economics score, because I know you're serious about it. You want a 6 or 7. Just go in here to register a free account, and in each lesson, what I'll tell you is, I'll teach you. Each lesson focuses on one specific topic. It's 1.5 hours. I'll teach you how to do all exam questions that could show up from our past experience. Okay, on that particular topic, we'll show you exactly how to answer those questions. It will be in great detail, showing you how to structure them. Okay, and how to evaluate. Okay, so. And more importantly, you can get a free trial lesson. So the first lesson is for free. Okay, so I think you may be a good fit for this. So just go on this website and register. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon.